Hello, everybody. As promised, I am beginning a series here on Saturdays. Saturdays only. Uh, by the time this airs, I will have named it. It's either going to be Changing the World or How to Change the World, one of those. But this first installment, this first episode, these are just speculations. I actually have outlined a book, um, several chapters of a book. It's not an exhaustive, comprehensive chapter outline, but I've been meditating, contemplating, researching, studying uh, this concept. There's a seed concept that I've mentioned on the podcast before, a particular paradigm that I believe will result in a, an unprecedented paradigm shift in the world. And so that word, the world, what the heck does that mean? I've got this little globe right over my head here, and I've got this map of what we refer to as the world. But the world means there's a number of ways that we use that term. In my world, which is a much smaller area, but the world also can refer to just the domain of humankind, or the world from a scriptural sense can mean everything bad about humankind. So, what I mean by changing the world, or how to change the world, is all of the above. I guess, right? I think the things I want to talk about will certainly affect or reflect upon all of those definitions, take them all into consideration at one point or another. And so this first episode, it's just an introduction. I'm not going through the chapters of the outline of the book yet. Maybe this series will just be me fleshing those things out more, and maybe, I've got a lot on my plate, and that this book, I've even changed the title like 4 times, so I couldn't even say what the title is, but it's something I would definitely want to have come out soon after the publication of the Soghomon Tehlirian memoir. I don't know, within a year of it, because that's going to be a landmark event in my life. Those of you who are watching this are certainly familiar. Well, I assume most of you watching this, unless for some reason this particular video goes viral or a bunch of people click on it just because of the way it's titled and have no idea who I am. My name is Michael Gavlak, and I am a Hollywood guy, or I have been one. Haven't really worked in Hollywood in the last couple of years. This past year, partly because of the shutdown, but I've been developing a project, so that's technically not working. I'm not getting paid. It's a Hollywood project, so, if you're going to define working in Hollywood as getting paid by some Hollywood entity, I have not been getting paid by a Hollywood entity for a couple of years now. I have a private investor who's helped pay for research, etc., and the translation. But as far as making money off of an entertainment commodity, I have not been doing that for the last couple of years. Still been developing something, and it's the story of Soghomon Tehlirian, a hero from World War I. And his memoir is about to be published. I can't even announce a date yet. But in my process of development, it's taken me around the world. When I say around the world, I don't mean I've been to all parts of the world, but I went to 2.5 years ago. We flew from Los Angeles to Moscow to Yerevan. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Moscow is up here, middle of Russia. Moscow. That was just our connecting flight to Yerevan, Armenia, right here. From Yerevan, we drove up into Georgia, Tbilisi, Georgia. From Georgia, we flew to Serbia. Spent time in Belgrade and another town an hour and a half south of Belgrade called, let's see if I can even find it. There's Belgrade. tiny little town. There it is, Valjevo. That's where Soghomon Tehlirian lived right after he left his home in Erzincan, Turkey. So he went from over here, right about over here, east or west of Erzurum is Erzincan. He left home for Serbia, where his father was. Visited his father's gravesite there. Anyway, went for this trip from Serbia to Venice. Where is Venice? I'm terrible. Spent several days there, somewhere in Italy. And then from Italy to London. And it was a research trip. Okay, so why am I pointing out all this in the How to Save the World podcast? Well, it's been my meditations and research that have kind of opened my eyes to a lot of things. And it's not just this research, but things that I've been meditating on for quite a while, in particular as a Christian. In this, I'm going to keep this brief. I'm going to wrap this up here in a second. So one thing I want to start off with is everybody falls into one of four categories. There are, I would say, Christians and non-Christians is the first division, right? The Christian worldview and the non-Christian worldview. And then both of those I break into two separate subdivisions. So 4 worldviews. So in the Christian worldview, there's optimist and pessimist. And in the secular worldview or the non-Christian worldview, there's optimist and pessimist. And so that's 4 categories. You are either a theist or a non-theist. And there are optimistic theists and pessimistic theists and optimistic non-theists, or, optimistic non-Christians and pessimistic non-Christians. So obviously the optimistic and pessimistic Christians have a lot in common, Christian theology, worldview. And then the non-Christian optimists and pessimists have a lot in common, their non-Christian worldview. But then your optimistic Christians and your optimistic non-Christians also have a lot in common, and your pessimistic Christians, your pessimistic non-Christians have a lot in common. All right, so those are the 4 categories that I put everyone in. And what I mean by optimist and pessimist, I'm referring to the state of humankind. Optimistic about the future of mankind, the future of the planet, our future here, our destiny. What is it? What are we to look forward to? Is it good or bad? Right? So the optimist and pessimist the optimists are, we believe that good things are in store, that the world is going in eventually and ultimately in the right direction, that the future is only getting better gradually, maybe 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of optimism. Whereas the pessimists on both sides would say the opposite. It's 1 step forward, 2 step back, that the world is becoming more and more corrupt or degraded or polluted, or we're headed for a destruction. And so the pessimist on both theistic and non-theistic, that's very popular. It's very popular because we tend to focus on the negative, and because it gets clicks, right? It sells books, doomsday prophecies, or writing about war and atrocity, and making movies about apocalypses, post-apocalyptic worlds. And there's plenty of evidence that we can see all around us of awful things happening, and then those things also, the awfulness of them being compounded by them being misused and misappropriated or abused or lied about and to gain power over others. And so there's plenty of fodder for the pessimists. But I'm in the category of the theistic optimist. And that's really the heart of what this series will be. I'm going to talk about why I'm an optimist. And let me just a hint at the next in the next episode. I'm going to talk about the environment, right? Because that's mostly the non-theistic pessimist say we are destroying the world if we don't make dramatic changes if industry doesn't shut down, if we don't stop using fossil fuels within the next 12 years, or now it's like down to 10 or 9 years, I don't know, we will pass the point of no return, and I don't know, the polar ice caps will melt and the world will flood and the sun will cook us, or I don't know. There's a bunch of projections, but that's what I'm going to cover in the next episode. So tune in next week. Subscribe and share. I will continue my daily weekday Armenian news updates. But next week we'll pick up where we left off here. Bye, everybody.